So what we said, the species is a basic unit of classification. The concept of species, the first thing you need to remember, the species is a basic unit of classification. And the species is a Latin word which means kind or appearance. Species is a Latin word which means kind or appearance. We say. Then dynamic. What is dynamic? Dynamic means which can change. That organisms, that particular species, when we announce it as a dynamic, that can change according to the environment. The populations of a species inhabiting the different geographical areas are in a continuous process of adapting to the conditions of their surrounding environment. Okay, because of this only, the evolution of the new species in the due course of time is going to be available. That means here, if you take 1 million years back, whatever the human being present, you may not compare with the present human being. The current human being is a modern man. Like in the series of events are happened, the changing continuously with the environment, changing continuously with the environment. The various kinds of human the changes are happened with surrounding environment and a new the particular human being is evolved. That we need to understand. We have a separate chapter to understand all these particular concepts that call organic evolution in second year. But we are talking about a basic line. We need to understand what is dynamic. Dynamic means which can change. What is change? Change according to the environment. Change according to the place where the organisms are living. The populations of a species inhabiting the different geographical areas are in a continuous process of adapting to the conditions of their surrounding environment, which leads to the evolution of the new species in the due course of time. Okay, next. The members of a species show assortative mating or preferential mating. The members of species show assortative mating or preferential mating, we can say. What is assortative mating or preferential mating? That individuals of one group of species, that individuals which are belongs to one species, they don't mate with the other group, other species. That what do you say? The assortative or preferential mating. And species share a common gene pool. For example, if I am the human being, if you are the human being, we both are belongs to species called sapiens. Whatever the 30,000 genes which are present on my chromosome, the same number, that same type of chromosomes you people even may have. Okay, so what do you call it as? Common gene pool. Pool, swimming pool means the pool of water. Then gene pool, what it means? The pool of genes. Species share a common gene pool. We can say the species share a common gene pool. That means the individuals which are belongs to one particular species are having the similar kind of gene. Then now let's start the opinions of the scientists here are about the species. The various scientists worked on this, on the concept of species. Then we start from John Ray. John Ray in his book Historia Generalis Plantarum. In his book Historia Generalis Plantarum, used the term species and described it on the basis of common descent, origin from common ancestors, we say common descent, as a group of morphologically similar organisms. That John Ray, according to John Ray, in his book Historia Generalis Plantarum, used the term species and described it on the basis of common descent. What it means, common descent, origin from common ancestors, as a group of morphologically similar organisms. Linnaeus. Linnaeus considered species in his book Systema Naturae as the basic unit of classification. He said it as a basic unit of classification. Okay, so Linnaeus considered species in his book Systema Naturae as the basic unit of classification. Buffon. Buffon in his book Natural History proposed the idea of evolution of species, which is the foundation for the biological concept of evolution. Buffon in his book Natural History proposed the idea of evolution of species as a foundation for the biological concept of evolution. Is the opinion of the Buffon. Buffon, what is biological concept of evolution? Buffon's biological concept of species explains that species is an interbreeding group of similar individuals that share the common gene pool and producing the fertile offspring Okay, so the biological concept of species, that means the dynamic nature of the species, biological concept of species or the dynamic nature of the species became more popular by the publications of the book Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin. Next, the Dov Jansky. What he said about the species? The Dov Jansky introduced the concept of Mendelian population. While defining a species, a Mendelian population is a group of sexually reproducing individuals within which mating takes place. That is the opinion of Dov Jansky. Okay. So let's get back here. Let's get back here. It is little bit confusing here. The properties that seems to be all are similar. Yes, they are similar actually. That is the opinions of the different kinds of people we can see. Okay. So let's talk about them. That one after another. The species we said as a basic unit of classification. We call the species as a basic unit of classification. Okay. And the second thing you need to understand here it is that the species is a Latin word which means the kind or appearance. Species is a Latin word which it means kind or appearance. Okay. Next, here it is that dynamic nature of the species that we need to understand. The dynamic nature of the species. That what is dynamic? Dynamic means which can change. That a particular species, if it is present here, if it is in one particular area, when their surrounding environment is getting changed, when surrounding environment is changed, that organism also going to be changed. We say that kind of feature as dynamic nature. That from this particular page, you need to understand. So this area, I'll make it get exposed more, how a subspecies is going to be formed. There I explain this more. Then that what we have to learn from this particular page, the dynamic nature of the species. Inhabiting the geographical, different geographical areas in a continuous process of adapting to the conditions of their surrounding environment. What do you think? Okay, so that's about that species concept in the species dynamic nature and assortative mating, preferential mating. That means that what is assortative mating or preferential mating here is talking about assortative mating or preferential mating. Let's take two species here. This is one species. We'll take two species here. That this is one species and another species. I'm trying to show. Wait a minute. I'm trying to show this to you. For just imagine, this is one group of species. Okay, so this is one group, and we'll take another color. This is another group of species here. These are another group of species. Okay. So what do you say preferential mating or assortative mating? That individuals which are belongs to one species, they don't mate with the another group of species. They're not going to mate with another group of species. What do you say? Assortative mating or preferential mating. Okay. So that's it about the preferential mating or assortative mating. Next, the in the concept of species, that we have taken one more word, that is common gene pool. What is common gene pool? That a particular group of individuals, whatever the genes present in a person, that the similar kind of genes can be expected in all the other, the total number of genes which are present in the human being, the total number of genes. In general, we use it to say 30,000 genes are present. The total number of genes present in the human being is said to be gene pool. What do you say it as? Pool means group. Okay, so gene pool we can say. Okay, so that's the species of individuals. That means you are sharing with me because we both are belongs to same species. So we share a common gene pool. In that way, we say the species are share a common gene pool. We use it to say. Okay, next, opinions of the scientists. The similar kind of words they used actually, the opinions of the scientists. Among them, we need to recognize what is the key term of that particular scientist. Like John Ray, you have to remember the book itself, that Hysteria Generalis Plantarum, that Historia Generalis Plantarum. The book we need to remember, that Historia Generalis Plantarum. In that book, he used the term species and described it on the basis of common descent. What he explained in that book about the species, what is his opinion on the species, that all the individuals, for example, we used to say in general, human came from monkey. That means origin from common ancestor. What is our common ancestor? My ancestor, your ancestor. That means all the human being ancestor is going to be the same. That means we used to say generally we all evolved from monkey. That means a particular species are evolved from their common ancestor. And a group of morphologically similar that we learned already. What is morphological? External features. They look alike. What do you say? Morphological similar. So here you need to remember the two things about the genre. Is the book is Historia Generalis Plantarum, and in that book he explained about the species as the common the common descent, that the species, the common descent, origin from common ancestor. All the individuals of a particular species that are there. He said about the origin of common descent. Okay, that we need to remember. Next, Linnaeus. What is the book of Linnaeus? Systema Naturae. Linnaeus explained this, that in his book, the Systema Naturae, explained about the species as the basic unit of classification. He explained the species as basic unit of classification. We need to remember this about Linnaeus. Linnaeus considered species in his book Systema Naturae as the basic unit of classification. Okay, next, let's take that Buffon opinion. Buffon, in his book Natural History, proposed the idea of evolution, proposed the idea of evolution of species, which is the foundation for the biological concept of evolution. That what is the opinion of Buffon on species? The species is a biological foundation for the biological concept of evolution. So Buffon, when we say immediately, need to remember that it is the foundation for the biological concept of evolution. What is biological concept of evolution? That we learn here. The biological concept of evolution means the Buffon biological concept of species explains that species is an interbreeding group. What is interbreeding? A particular individuals which are belongs to one species. I am drawing many species here. So these particular individuals which are belongs to one particular species can interbreed themselves. They're all going to be interbreeding themselves. So like this, the interbreeding is possible among them. They can interbreed themselves. Okay. In the group of similar individual and share the common gene pool. What is common gene pool? The genes of mine and genes of you are going to be same. That we need to understand. So what to be highlighted over in this particular area? That biological concept, foundation for the biological concept of evolution. What is the meaning of foundation for the biological concept of evolution? That he said that species are an interbreeding group. Okay, so this is the first thing to be remembered. He said it as species as an interbreeding group and they share common gene pool and they produce a fertile offspring. Okay, so these things to be remembered in case of Buffon. Okay, so in case of Buffon, we need to remember this, that various scientists, the group, we need to remember them. Charles Darwin. to explain more about the species actually. His book is Origin of Species. The Charles Darwin Origin of Species. After that only the dynamic nature of the species. That means changing according to the environment. These kind of things became more popular with his publication, his book, that Origin of Species, Charles Darwin. We are going to discuss more about Charles Darwin in second year, Organic Evolution chapter. Dubzhansky. Dubzhansky. According to Dubzhansky, what is species? Species is a concept of Mendelian population. Should remember, according to Dubzhansky, species is the concept of Mendelian population. He said it as the Mendelian population. Okay, so Mendelian population. You need to remember. So I'm highlighting this area. So Dubzhansky, that means you need to remember it as Mendelian population. Okay. Next, while defining species, he used the word Mendelian population. What is Mendelian population according to him? Is a group of sexually reproducing individuals within which mating takes place. That means nothing but the same interbreeding population. His opinion on the species. Dubzhansky said Mendelian population. Okay, so these are all the different kinds of opinion. For every scientist, his own keyword is there. So when we say Dubzhansky, we say Mendelian population. What is Mendelian population? Mendelian population means he used a word instead of species, he used a word called Mendelian population. What is Mendelian population? The same definition of the species, sexually reproducing individual within which mating takes place, interbreeding population. Charles Darwin, Origin of Species. What do you say? Dynamic nature of the species explained more about by Charles Darwin. Buffon. Buffon, need to remember the Buffon as foundation for the biological concept of evolution. Okay, so his book is Natural History. Linnaeus, he said it as basic unit of classification. John Ray. John Ray is coined the term species actually. He used the term species and described it as a common descent, origin from common ancestors. Okay, so these are the various opinions of the scientists. Let me say once again. John Ray, Book Historia generalis plantarum. Opinion, the common descent, origin from common ancestor. Linnaeus, the book he wrote Systema Naturae, opinion on species, basic unit of classification. Okay, so that book is Natural History, Buffon. Linnaeus, book Systema Naturae, Buffon, Natural History, and opinion of the Buffon is foundation for the biological concept of evolution. That Charles Darwin, his book Origin of Species, opinion, he explained about the dynamic nature of the species. Dubzhansky, Dubzhansky opinion, Mendelian population. His opinion on species is, he said it as a Mendelian population. Okay, let's continue with the four concepts of the species. Four basic concepts of the species here. We say species as a breeding unit, species as an ecological unit, species as a genetic unit, species as an evolutionary unit. Okay, so that need to remember that there's the four units here, the species. We consider it as a breeding unit, ecological unit, genetic unit, evolutionary unit. Let's take one after another. When we call that, why we call the species as a breeding unit? Because they are reproductively isolated from the individuals of the other species. That means that particular species, which we are going to say a group, that the group of species here, that this particular group of species, which these are all the, imagine, they're all the kind of a group of species. Don't get confused that every time I'm using that various diagrams, maybe that is a species, a group of species. Then let's take another group of species here. Let's take another group of species. So this is another group of species. I'm trying to draw this. This is another group. Here in this group, that way other species are present. Some other species are there. So what we are saying, they are reproductively isolated. What is the meaning of isolation? Separation. Reproductively isolated from the individuals of other species. The species is a breeding unit that they are reproductively isolated from the individuals of other species. Okay. Next, species is an ecological unit. That the species is said to be an ecological unit. What is ecological unit? They are going to share a similar ecological niche. So, what is niche? Why said over? What is niche? The functional status of an organism is called as niche. The functional status of an organism is said to be niche or niche, the functional status of an organism. As I said to you in earlier class, that niche, that species share similar ecological niche. That's why we say the species as the ecological unit. Okay, next. Species are going to show the similarity in the karyotype. What is meant by karyotype? The species are going to show the similarity in the karyotype. For example, if I have 23 chromosomes in my nucleus, if I have 23 pairs of chromosomes in my nucleus, that you people even have the same 23 pairs of chromosomes. Okay, why? Why? Because we are all belongs to the same species, that is the human species, that all we are belongs to human species. So if I have 23 pairs of chromosomes, definitely you people also have the same number. What do you say that as? Species have similarity in the karyotype. That's why we say genetic unit. Species as a genetic unit. Okay. Next, species is an evolutionary unit. The species is an evolutionary unit. That means having similar structure and functional characteristics. The having similar structure and functional characteristics. We are going to say species as a evolutionary unit. Species as an evolutionary unit. We say it as because of the structure and functional characteristics are going to be same. Okay, so that's it about the concepts of the species here, that species is an evolutionary unit because having similar structure and functional characteristics. Species is a genetic unit because showing the similarity in the karyotype. Species is an ecological unit, that because they are sharing the same ecological niche. The species is a breeding unit, the reproductively isolated from the individuals of the other species. Okay, so that's it about. And after that, the properties, opinions of the scientists, and that four individual characteristic features of the species. What we are seeing this, here, that is the properties like some we discussed yesterday, some we are now explaining. Species is the basic unit of classification. Meaning of the species is a kind or appearance. It's a Latin word. They're all properties. Species is dynamic, which means going to change according to the surrounding environment. Likewise, then populations of a species inhabiting different geographical areas are continuous process of adapting. So we expand that concept now. The members of a species show assortative or preferential mating, and species share a common gene pool. That means my 30,000 genes, your 30,000 genes, all are belongs to one gene pool. Okay, next, opinions of the scientists. John Ray, Book Historia Generalis Plantarum, explained about the common descent of the species. Linnaeus, Systema Naturae, said the species as basic unit of classification. Buffon, the natural history, his book is Natural History. In that book, he explained about the species as a foundation for the biological concept of evolution. Okay, so then Charles Darwin, in his book Origin of Species, he explained about the dynamic nature of the species. Doug Jansky said the species as a Mendelian population. Okay, so these are all the different kinds of opinions of the scientists, and the four basic properties of the species we said. After that, the breeding unit, ecological unit, genetic unit, and evolutionary unit. Okay, breeding unit, ecological unit, genetic unit, evolutionary unit. Okay. So having similar structure and functional characteristics, we say as an evolutionary unit. Having the similar karyotype, genetic unit. That ecological unit, that means sharing the same ecological niche. Breeding unit, reproductively isolated from the individuals of other species. Okay. So here that we need to continue with the concept of species actually that we are trying to understand the concept of species and that means dynamic nature of the species here. So let us imagine that there is a crow. I'm going to start a story with a crow. That crow, Carvus splendens, the scientific name of the crow is Carvus splendens. Okay, that we are moving with the scientific name, the Carvus splendens. Okay, that group there, just like a story I'm going. First of all, there is a crow called Carvus splendens. Where it is? It is there in India. The Carvus splendens in India. Carvus splendens in Sri Lanka. Carvus splendens in Myanmar. Carvus splendens in Myanmar. Okay. Uh, yeah. The Carvus splendens in Myanmar. Okay, okay. Well, we do one thing here. I'll take the screen. I'll go with the screen. We'll go on to the whiteboard. Let me connect. That a very interesting story. Just very interesting story here. Just go through. Let's go through this to understand that particular concept of the species, dynamic nature of the species, dynamic nature of the species. So where we go, yeah, we'll go with this particular area. No need, I think. Let us remove this. Yeah. So what we said, there is a crow. There is a crow. The crow, with the scientific name is about Carvus splendens. The scientific name of the crow is Carvus splendens. Yes, where this crow is there in India, in Sri Lanka, in Myanmar, another country, Myanmar, that India, Sri Lanka, Myanmar. Here we are trying to understand the dynamic nature of the particular species. That there is a crow in India, Carvus splendens. There is a crow in Sri Lanka, that Carvus splendens. Myanmar, Carvus splendens. That Carvus is the name of the genus, and splendens is the name of the species. Okay, so this is the story. Now, actually, this is a story which was happened millions of years back. Millions of years back is the story which has happened. Now I am going to explain. So what happened millions of years back? There is a common land between India, Sri Lanka and Myanmar. Actually, there is no any barrier in between the India, Sri Lanka and Myanmar. There is no barrier at all. Okay. So in these particular conditions, that what happened, some isolation is getting formed. Isolation. So that is geographical isolation. We can say it as geographical isolation. Okay, so that what I term this as geographical isolation. So I think you people are having some problem with this kind of terminology. So every term will come in mind after this story, after the explanation of this particular story. Every term will come in mind. Okay. So geographical isolation. What is this actually? At least you people may know that India and Sri Lanka at current condition situation, they are separated by an ocean, isn't it? So that's what I am saying, that as the isolation. Isolation means separation. That you may know that between India and Sri Lanka there is an ocean at present. What I am saying now, the ocean is there at present, but not on earlier times. That means millions of years back, There is no barrier between the India and Sri Lanka. There is a common land. The total India and Sri Lanka and Myanmar is having a common land. Over a period of time, what happened? That a barrier appeared. What do you say the barrier? Isolation, separation. Separation of whom? This species, crow species. So where you see the crow now? Yeah, we'll see the crow. Indian crow, Carvus splendens is as usual. Sri Lankan crow, Carvus splendens is as usual. Myanmar crow, Carvus splendens is as usual. And now here, you people need to understand that one more issue in this particular area, that is, environment is going to change continuous time. Environment is going to be changed over in continuous time. That means that environment is not stable. That environmental changes will go on like that. Okay, so when environment changes, organism also changes. Just for example, that in Sri Lanka, there is so hot climate. That means high temperatures what happened. So that's why what happened to the condition of crow of Sri Lanka, that all the crow became black. Don't laugh, just example I'm giving. So all the crows became black in Sri Lanka. Okay. So a little cool in case of Myanmar, less temperature is there. So what happens to the crow of Myanmar? In the crow of Myanmar, in Myanmar, we can't say white, we'll take it gray color. Let's say gray color. The gray, they became gray. Okay. Crow of Myanmar, gray. Then the crow of India, with our climatic condition, over a period of time, it was became brown. Okay. Now my question is, can an Indian crow will fly towards the Sri Lanka? Yeah, you people say that. Yeah, it can fly. No, there between the India and Sri Lanka, there is a big ocean, isn't it? That crow is not that much capable to fly from India to Sri Lanka by crossing that bigger ocean. That cannot fly. That's what I'm saying. That is geographical isolation. What is geographical isolation? Isolation means separation. They are get separated. And after the separation, environmental changes are going on. After the separation, let me take fresh their current condition. There is a big isolation between the India and Sri Lanka and Myanmar. Climatic conditions are also changed. So we came to the current situation. The present situation is like this. There is a crow in India, Carvus splendens, isn't it? And there is a crow in Sri Lanka, that Carvus splendens, the scientific name of the crow in Sri Lanka. There is a crow in Myanmar, Carvus splendens. But because of the geographical isolation, because of the geographical isolation, excuse me, because of the geographical isolation, what we said now, that the crow of Sri Lanka appeared black because of the high temperature condition, gray in Myanmar, that brown in India. So what happened there? The species are dynamic. That we used a word earlier. What is dynamic? Which can change. So that's why they change. They changed according to their climatic condition. They changed according to their climatic condition. Okay. So change is common. That's what we said it as dynamic nature. That species are having dynamic nature. When they change, when environment changes, that means environment here became with high temperatures. That's why it was changed to black color. It was changed to brown color. It was changed to gray color. Just I am talking about the example that you may thinking over that crow is now in black color only. Shades they are talking. The different shades. Indian crow and Sri Lankan crow is not with the same shade. Why? Because they get adapted to their surrounding climatic condition. That's what we say. Dynamic nature. That is dynamic, which can change. Okay, now morphological differences came. What is morphology? External characteristic feature differences among the three. Morphological differences came. Okay, what happens after morphological differences? We are supposed to create a new taxonomic category, that is subspecies. A new taxonomic category, that is subspecies. To learn subspecies concept only, we are now moved with this particular area, that the subspecies of India is splendens. The subspecies of Sri Lanka is protagator. The subspecies of Sri Lanka, protagator. The subspecies of Myanmar is insolent. Okay, subspecies of Myanmar is insolent. So now here that only thing need to be raised over why subspecies, that what is the reason for subspecies. Just keep this in mind from the total story. Why subspecies? Why you consider three subspecies? That because of external differences, morphological differences. That means brown, black, gray, these kind of differences came. That's why due to that you need to remember it as due to, I'm writing bigger, that is because to understand this concept. Due to morphological differences. Then how does the morphological differences are appeared? Geographical isolation. Geographical isolation. So when geographical isolation occurs, when the environmental conditions are changed, in the three places where we show that environmental conditions are changed, according to that environmental conditions, the organisms are also going to be changed. That we say the species as dynamic nature, that we call that condition as dynamic nature of the species. Okay. Due to the dynamic nature of the species, they change according to their surrounding environment. Okay, their surrounding environment. What is my concept here? If there is a species, if there is a species is present, so if that particular species is geographically isolated to the three places, if geographically isolated to three places, what happens there? The morphological differences will come in them. Okay, so when morphological differences, because of what? Geographical isolation. Because of geographical isolation, morphological differences will come. Okay, so what these morphological differences can make? Subspecies. What I am saying, that leads to the formation of that lower than the species. What do you say? The subspecies, that new subspecies will be created. Okay, that subspecies, what I am saying, in case of India, the subspecies of crow is splendens. In Sri Lanka, the subspecies of crow is verticatus. And subspecies of crow in Myanmar is insolence. The full name it will come like this. Full name it will come like this. That in case of India, Carvus splendens, splendens. Carvus splendens, splendens. Okay. So what is Carvus? That is the name of the genus. What is splendens? That is the name of species. What is splendens? Another splendens. That is subspecies. Why subspecies? Due to morphological differences. Why morphological differences? Due to geographical isolation. That you need to understand. Okay. Next, the crow of Sri Lanka. Talking about the crow of Sri Lanka. The scientific name of the crow of Sri Lanka is Carvus splendens protagatus. Carvus splendens protagatus. Okay. So what is Carvus? Genus. What is splendens? Species. What is protagatus? That is subspecies. Why subspecies? External differences, morphological differences. Why morphological differences? Geographical isolation. Okay. Next, that Myanmar, the crow of Myanmar. When it comes to the crow of Myanmar, that the scientific name is about Carvus splendens insolens. Carvus splendens insolens. In that, Carvus genus, splendens species, insolens is subspecies. Insolence is subspecies. Myanmar, crow of Myanmar, Carvus splendens insolens. Okay, Carvus splendens insolens. What the crow of Sri Lanka, Carvus splendens protagator. Then crow of India, the Carvus splendens. Okay, this is the crow of India, Indian crow. Okay, so what is the speciality here? We are talking about this one. That is subspecies. There are three subspecies per crow. Our crow and Sri Lankan crow. They are both are same species actually. But what's the problem? Some morphological differences made them to be subspecies. Like, okay. Then Carvus splendens insolens. So that is another subspecies in case Myanmar. Okay. So that is a total story of species and as well as subspecies concept. Species and subspecies.